Another myth that's pretty common are going to be like familiars. Not every witch has a familiar, nor do they all need one. Oscar is not my familiar, okay? My chubby kitty. He will abandon me at the first sign of danger. He is actually my boyfriend's mom's cat, who I kidnapped, and I have refused to return him. Welcome back, you guys. I'm Tassie, and this is my Shaman Memoirs channel. I know, I'm late. I'm late on uploading a video. However, I am trying to get it out, you guys. It has been one heck of a week for me at work. So I have been working really long hours, but now I am pushing out my video for you guys. So we're just going to move on from that, okay? In this episode, we're going to be talking about advices for witches. That's right. So as you guys know, this is a shaman channel, Hmong shaman to be exact. And on my channel, I talk about, like my experiences, my memories, and especially when I was a shaman and growing up and how I am now and all the ghostly goodies I'm going through. So with this episode, I was really inspired because I was asked by a viewer to kind of debunk some myths about witches, and it really got me thinking because, I have met some witches in real life. That's right. They are real, you guys. And so we're going to be talking about all of that. And I'm going to include some advices for witches that I honestly think can also apply to other people as well, including other shamans. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, we're going to cover what is a witch. All right. So a lot of people might be jumping to like Harry Potter or like the Salem witch trials, you guys. So essentially it is basically anybody, man, woman, or child who practices magic. So I do know in some family lineages, they actually come from a line of witches. And that's pretty common, especially like in European descent. However, did you know that even with like voodoo, if you're thinking about Africa, my younger sister was actually telling me, because she had studied African history, and she was telling me about what she had learned about voodoo and how that all came about. And it was really interesting. So I am not going to go into voodoo and everything like that. However, whenever you guys are thinking about a witch, especially nowadays, I don't follow any. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. But I have heard that witches is really popular on Instagram. I did not know this. So, obviously, again, it can be a woman or a man. It doesn't really matter, you guys. You can be a witch. And you could be part of a coven, or you could be practicing on your own. So, just gonna also add, just because you're part of a coven, it doesn't mean you're a stronger witch than somebody who is not part of a coven. So with like Hmong shamanism, it's kind of like those who are raised with a teacher, those who are raised with multiple teachers, and those who are raised on their own. So all of that, the power and the strength, it all comes back to the individual. It doesn't matter. Now, covens, for those of you guys who do not know, it is basically a group of witches who do get together and they practice spells. So some types of witchcraft, and this you can definitely apply to anybody who practices magic. Some people will rely on one another's power to create a bigger spell. Another myth that's pretty common are going to be like familiars. Not every witch has a familiar, nor do they all need one. Oscar is not my familiar, okay? My chubby kitty. He will abandon me at the first sign of danger. If you follow me on social media, oftentimes I'll post things about Oscar, my cat. He is actually my boyfriend's mom's cat, who I kidnapped, and I have refused to return him. So Oscar lives with me now. Now, again, Oscar is not my familiar. For anybody who does not know the story behind familiars, there's a myth, okay, that women, because it's easier to say it's a woman who was seduced by the devil, basically made a pact with the devil, and in exchange, the devil gave them a familiar. And a familiar is basically a low-level demon. And I guess witches can use familiars to do magic. They can use them for like magical spells or make the spells stronger, and they can apparently morph into their familiar and run off into the woods and do things with it. Like, scare their enemy. I don't know. But all of that aside, you guys, we're talking modern day times now. With familiars, Essentially how it works is a lot of people who are spiritually inclined, meaning they do practice magic or a lot of magic runs through them, they tend to have an easier time communicating with other entities, including animals. So you may or may not know this, but I'm actually a dog person. And I used to have a dog. His name was Grizzly, and he was a German Shepherd, and he was butt crazy. But anyways, you know, for myself, I have definitely an affinity to animals where it's very easy for me to communicate and understand them. Any animal that I meet, it's like they just look at me and they just know. And I can already tell like what they're feeling, what they're thinking, etc. So people who are more spiritually inclined, they tend to definitely call and attract a lot more animals to them. And with cats, okay, the whole cats thing. I'm going to let you guys know it doesn't matter that they're black, okay? The color of the cat does not matter. Or animal, just in case you're wondering. Does it count for all animals, okay? And I will say that animals, they tend to, especially if you have a connection with it, you will tend to feel calmer around these type of animals, especially if it's something you really love. Generally, you feel more calm. So the whole point of a familiar is to help calm their witch. And yes, you can use them to amplify certain types of magic. I'm not going to tell you how, but you can if you wanted to. Some people obviously would not do that to their pets because they see them more as a pet and not so much as a familiar. There's a lot that we could go on with this, but we're going to move on. Another myth is that witches are evil. No, they're not. So it's just like anybody can choose to be evil, even a shaman, even though traditionally when you hear a shaman, you're thinking of like a witch doctor or somebody who's a healer, right? Even they can be evil. We all know this. So it really comes down to the individual. You know, in history, they're going to associate witches with being evil because they're somebody who has come into terms with their magic and they actively practice it. It's unheard of. So it seems scary, especially if you don't know what they're doing and if there's a sacrifice involved. Even for like shamanism, if there was a sacrifice involved, everybody thinks it's the work of the devil. But if you actually understand the magic that's being done, a lot of it's not evil. Now, we're going to talk about it. Really briefly, shamans and witches. Okay, shamanism, especially Hmong shamanism, it is very structured. It is very, very structured. And a lot of it is tied to traditions and politics. So as much as, you know, we are modernizing now and a lot of it isn't so deeply rooted into traditions anymore, there's a lot when it comes to Hmong shamanism. And if you change something too fast and you're too different, people become afraid of you. That is human nature. People become afraid of you. So again, when it comes to Hmong shamanism, it is very, very structured. You have to progress accordingly, and everybody has different gifts and different abilities. Yet at the same time, at the end of the day, people will still judge shamans if they do not have a certain ability or skill set that that individual is familiar with. And even then, shamans, their abilities range so much. Everything from psychic abilities to healing people, to bringing them from the brink of the dead, to going to the afterlife, to going into the future and the past, okay? The abilities range so much, including, you know, like demonic curings, okay, like exorcisms, this type of situations, and haunted houses. You know, it's like, it can range so much by that actual individual. So with witches and witchcraft, they are not as structured unless they are part of an older coven. All right, older covens, they have traditions just like any old civilization out there, okay? They have traditions you have to follow. And if you were not, or if you started a new coven, or you are, you know, you come from a bloodline of witches, there's some sort of structure there that you can create. However, it's a lot more lax. And it's not so much about having to prove your worthiness as you would within a coven. And within a coven, I find that it's easier in the sense that they have things already set up. They have more experienced individuals who can help you and help you understand quicker on what's going on and how spells work and if something is working and what you should do if you're stuck. Whereas if you're alone, definitely if you come from a bloodline of witches, you're naturally going to have stronger abilities than somebody who may be in a coven. And I don't care how old that coven is, okay? If you are born naturally from a family of witches, you will naturally have stronger abilities. And I guess that kind of ties in with like shamans who were born and they were meant to be a shaman as a child versus those who are like much older. I'm talking like in their 50s and suddenly they become a shaman, okay? I am not saying again that they are not a shaman just because it didn't happen to them until they were much older. I am just saying, obviously, if you look at the somatics, when you start at 5 years old versus when you're in your 50s, you know, the practice time from there, it is huge. You're going to gain so much more experience. You're going to understand things so much better. And everybody, when it comes to shamans, obviously for in the monk community, we believe that once it hits you though, because I have to be chosen. This isn't something you can just pick up and do, okay? You can go crazy. You can literally go crazy if you do this. So, you know, that aside, you could have gone to church your whole life and then suddenly turned to shamanism. And then, you know, you could have been around shamanism your whole life and then suddenly much later it hits you as well. So we are chosen by spirits to become a shaman when it is our time. And, you know, some people like me, we just keep running. So another big difference between shamanism and witches definitely is that, really quickly about familiars, some witches will use the spirit of an animal as a familiar. They will call on it. However, for shamans, our familiars, it's actually our spirit guides, in case you didn't know. And I had to say that to you guys. For shamans, our familiars are going to be spirit guides who are active in our lives, who communicate to us, who show and guide and tell us what to do and how to do things. And they teach us everything. So that would definitely be a big difference. Whereas for witches, they're going to be relying more so on themselves. And they do have certain gods that they may pray to, reach out to help them. And then other entities as well. All right, so this next part, I'm going to be giving you guys advice. If you are starting off as a witch or anybody who is practicing magic, I think that these are important tips that my guides would like to tell you guys as far as things that you should actively remember and possibly practice just to protect yourself. So the first one is going to be always grounding yourself. That might sound weird. You may have heard that in the past. What does it actually mean? So when you ground yourself, that means you are preparing your spirit, mind, and body to be awake and aware, and you are prepared for something to come. Whenever you practice any kind of magic, you need to ground yourself. And that's as simple as pinching yourself, touching the ground. Some people will physically sit there on the ground and have to touch the ground with their hands. Imagine you're walking across a stream or a body of water and there is a current coming, okay? So if you start to get scared, you have to ground yourself, which means you're planting your feet down and you're trying to stabilize yourself. So if the current was strong, it doesn't wash you away. So that is the same theory behind that as far as grounding yourself. You need to ground yourself whenever you practice any form of magic. Any form, including prayers. The next advice is that your path may not be someone else's path, and vice versa. And the reason why that is important, you guys, because emotions plays a huge role in magic. Why? The power of manifestation. And when I say this, it's kind of like those who feel the need that they need to convince others. They need to convince others to follow their path, to follow them. They need to. It is like built in them. They must do it. People who are doing that, it's because they are trying to convince themselves. That is why. You don't need to convince anybody else but yourself. I don't care if you think you're going to save their soul, okay? Go and save their soul then. Don't try to convince them, and that is how you are going to save their soul. That's not how it works, you guys. So at any point in time, if you are practicing a ritual, a spell, and you have the slightest amount of doubt, that will weaken your spell, your power, your manifestation. The slightest amount, you guys. It is insane. Even if you heard it in passing and in that moment, you're like, that person doesn't even know what they're talking about. You will be surprised at how that can affect your magic, okay? So again, you need to be at peace and content with what you are doing, and that you don't need to convince other people. And even if other people are trying to convince you, if you see your path and you already know you're going to take it, take it. Don't let somebody try to sway you, go left and right, come back around, and then you keep going. You're never going to reach your destination. You have to be strong in your emotion, and you need to be focused when you are trying to practice any type of magic. Another tip is that you should never use your life force. So, using your life force, so you guys understand this, I don't practice for the general public because my guides refuse to let me, because I would be using my life force. Your life force means you could die earlier, you guys. That is basically what it means. All right, so the reason why shamans have guides and the reason why I don't practice for the general public. 1, I don't have my shrine up. 2, my guides are actually the ones who do everything for me. They do everything for me, okay? However, if I don't have all of my stuff set up the way it should be properly done, the way my guides need it done, I will be using my own force, my own life force, you guys. And the only way you can ever replenish that life force, do I have to tell you? I feel like I still have to tell you. You need to take it from something else. And there's a lot of connotations that come with that. You cannot just easily replenish your life force by going to sleep, okay? And then you wake up feeling refreshed. That's not how it works. How do you know you're using your life force? So you know you're using your life force if after practicing any type of magic, you feel tired or you feel sick. You have used your life force. So for shamans, we have our guides. It is our guides. Our guides aren't there, even though we call them our guides. They actually do everything for us, okay? So we basically carry them with us in everything we do, any magic we do, right? Yes, they will tell us which direction to go and which spell to chant and what you need to do next, right? But it is also their energy, their life force that they are giving to their shaman to use. The shaman itself should not be using their own life force. And if you are a shaman and you can't tell when you are using your own life force, you have not progressed far enough in your journey and you need to continue to practice. The number one thing you should know when you're practicing any type of magic is what life force are you using. So for a witch, let's say you are a witch and you don't have these guides like the way shamans are, you know, like how they're kind of like out there and really aggressive. Okay, mine are. What you would then do in exchange, because if you do heavier types of magic, okay, this isn't like a spell of protection, okay? This is going to be something a little bit more, you know, like think on it. It'll come to you. But if you're doing something a little heavier, I'm going to say it's heavier, you're going to need more energy and you don't want to use your own life force. What you would then do in exchange is contact another stronger god or entity who will be willing to use their life force to assist you in the spell or magic. Do not use your own. Do not do it. Okay, like even if you think you're strong enough, you are so strong. You are so grounded. Your power of manifestation is amazing. Do not use your life force. There is no spell worth it. I just thought of, unless you're trying to exchange your life for somebody else. Okay, maybe. But I'm just saying. And the next piece of advice, you guys, a half-used candle, maybe it's old, is just as potent as a sparkling, spanking, brand new one. What does that mean? Basically, don't judge things by the way it looks. Even if something is used, even if something is old, you, as an individual who practices magic, should know how to reinforce it, how to re-energize it, and how to use it. Again, it goes back to, it doesn't matter what coven you're from. okay? It doesn't matter how many teachers you've had that had to try and raise you, okay? It literally comes from the individual. It is you. All of the magic, it comes from you. It's not going to come better from a cup that's shiny, okay? And honestly, I'll tell you guys a little story. I learned this and it was really odd how I learned it. It was never something I really thought about or spent a lot of time on it. But then as I got older and as the years passed, it really dawned on me because of my favorite goat horns. So I have a favorite pair of goat horns. And I've shown it to you guys in my Hooplee video on how to do the calling of spirit ceremony or ritual. So those horns are actually not my favorite horns. When you're a shaman, you have multiple horns, right? Don't ask, you just do. You have multiple pieces of tools, okay? You collect them as the years go by. It's natural. As a witch, you would do the same thing, right? You start to collect tools and you start to make your own tools or make your own items for rituals and spells. So it's like a chef collecting spices and kitchenware. Now, my horns, those horns, man, those were one of my original horns that I got. And I remember at the time, they were just the ones that were there. And I needed it to raise my shrine. Well, little did I know, they were my guide's favorite horns. So whenever I had to do any shaman ritual, that was the first thing I grabbed all the time. And I would always mentally tell myself too, like, okay, when I go and I thought dong, which means you're going outside of your house to do a ceremony or a ritual for somebody else outside of your home, I am going to grab my pretty ones, you know? No, it was always these particular horns that I always use. And you know what's funny? The more I used it, the more I practiced it, and the more I did magic with it, I started to hear it. I started to hear it speak to me, you guys. It started to speak to me. I started to understand it. I started to know before I even threw those horns, you guys, because it was talking to me. And it is the weirdest thing. But anyways, the whole point of this story was that, you know, even if you might think something's prettier, and I'm not saying, like, now I love those horns, okay? When I see those horns, it's so much memories. It's like, we went through so much. But yeah. So again, you know, like, don't spend a whole lot of money on something just because you think you're going to perform better, you're going to be better. It really, again, comes down to the individual and you and your magic that's going to come out. So I now love my horns. I actually recently gave away a pair of horns that I had, and they were like what I had thought was pretty, and I just didn't care for them. Like, I had no care, like, at all when I gave them away. It was just the weirdest thing. Now, a last few words for you guys from my guides about witches. There are some pretty powerful witches out there. They are very aware that there are powerful witches out there. And you are a witch as long as you consider yourself one. This isn't something that you need to be Christianed or you have to get a tattoo that says you're a witch, you know, like, you don't have to dress the part, you know, like the way you think they look like in the movies or in books or even on social media. If you believe you are a witch and you want to practice magic, do it. And the whole point of witchcraft is that you're practicing your craft. And in time, you will learn about, you know, if you have affinities to certain elements and how to reach out to the ground and to the air, to the sky, literally using fire. You will learn all of those abilities as you keep practicing. And it's going to be really funny, and if I say this, but I don't think people really understand how easy it is. Literally, summer's coming. Okay, it's March. But you know what? It's warm right now, and I know we're going to go through some more snow in Minnesota, but I have hope that summer's coming. Literally, sit next to a bonfire. You sit next to fire. Seriously. And practice magic around fire. That is how you're going to learn, do you have an affinity to fire? And I can't even, I want to tell you guys what to do, but I can't. It's like, I can see everything. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't tell you guys. But just go and sit around fire, okay? Same thing with sit around a bowl of water. All right. Sit on a hill on a windy day, you know, go lay in dirt. Okay. Like, I hate gardening. That just reminded me of gardening. Okay. Anyways, literally, the more you are around something, you will be amazed at if you start to do things. You may not even notice that you're doing it. And you might think it's just a weird habit of yours and maybe you have OCD of some kind. But you'll be amazed. I really, really wish I could just tell you guys. I'm sorry, I can't. But that is how you're going to know if you have affinities to these certain type of elements I'm listing and the kind of magic you can perform with it. All right, you guys. So that is it for this video. I hope that gives you guys a lot to think about and some things to practice. Don't burn yourself. And until next time.